What's up guys, my name is Marc Steiner, and today I'm going to teach you how to use the brand new film look creator in Davinci Resolve 19. This video is going to be broken up into two sections. The first section is going to be the easy way to do the new film look creator on a single node, and the second half of the video is going to be the more professional built out node tree and how I like to use this in my color grading. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So now we're on the laptop, and this is going to be the easy mode single node color grading experience with this new film look creator feature. Just before we start, I am going to show you that we are in a color managed space. So if we go color management, I'm in Davinci Resolve wide gamut and then output Rec. 709A because I'm using a Mac. So now that's out of the way, I can just go up to the effects tab and search film look creator and drag that onto my image. And as you can see, it's changed it quite a bit already, but we're going to do something first because this is our single node color grade, which means we do actually have to do some color space stuff. So we're going to go input color space, which is slog3, and here also slog3. And then our output color space is going to be Rec. 709 and Rec. 709A. And now already we're looking great. Boom. Before, after slog, this is just a simple 709 grade plus the film look vibe. The first thing I'm going to do is mess with my exposure right here. And I want to definitely bring this down because I purposely overexposed this, as you do with slog. And we're going to add some contrast just a little bit. We're going to bring down the highlights. Yeah, we just like want a little bit less highlights in the light here because it's not really affecting that much else. It's affecting here, 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 but the highlights for the most part we just want to bring down just a little bit. So I'm going to reset that and then bring it down a little bit further. And then with the fade, this is like using the tone curve and adding this. So we could just do it with the tone curve, but I'll save that for later. But I'm just going to reset that real quick because we don't want that messing with this. So our fade is going to give us that kind of effect. So our fade, boom, something like there, because before we were at 0, and as you can see the image up here, we have a nice little fade going in the shadow, so I don't want to take too much away from that. White balance, I do kind of want a cooler look for this, but we will see how that is affecting our image before I actually commit to something, because there are some other things that I want to do before we get to white balance to see if I can dial in the exact color I want. Tint, obviously green magenta. For here I think we're pretty good as well. I'm just going to drag a little bit more magenta. It's going to give it a little bit more blue look versus green. Looks a little dirty, but we can work on that later as well. And that's the beautiful thing about color grading. You just tweak different effects and then you can come back in and tweak them to your heart's content. Skin bias, because of the lighting, we're not actually getting that much in the skin tones right here, which is a little bit unfortunate. Subtractive sat, as you can see, this is one of my favorite new features in this update because subtractive is just beautiful. Because I do like my images to be a little bit more on the punchy side, I am going to increase this a decent amount. So our baseline is 1.2. I think I'm going to go up to 1.7-ish there, where it's not completely like messing up the skin tones in the cheek here. And then richness, again, that's kind of like vibrancy. I do want to increase that quite a bit. So we start out at 1 here on the right side, and then I'm just going to go to like 1.4. And then bleach bypass, again, is a very specific look, which I do not like. So I don't like this very grainy, hard, gritty look on this image, but maybe for your footage, that's what you like. But I'm just going to ignore that, and I'm going to ignore it 90% of the time because that's just not the style of image I'd like to make. So we're going to go to the next tab here, which is the split toning, and we're going to enable that. And I'm just going to hit 100%. And as you can see, we got that nice orange and teal kind of vibe going right here, which is very cinematic. And obviously this is very exaggerated, but that is the kind of color vibe that we want. And the hue angle is like pretty good because it'll give you that like opposite of the color spectrum vibe to your footage. So what I want is I want my highlights to be a bit on the more like aqua teal side. So I'm just going to kind of dial that in right there. And then I'm going to bring it lower to not have that super exaggerated effect. So I'm going to bring it somewhere around this marker. And you can see the before and after of the split tone. We've cooled things down. We've made things a little bit more like moody, and it just really helps. So with the pivot here, you're going to dictate what is warm and what is cool and what is like a highlight and what is a shadow. So that's really cool that you have that kind of power there. I really like this because you can have more finite control over what is being effective. So if we just dial that back to the default, we start at 0.3. If we go up, I don't really like that. If we go down, that might be a little bit too much. So I think somewhere around 3.8, 3.9, just anywhere between 0.3 and 0.4 works best for this image. So if we turn that on and off, it brings a little bit back in the skin tones and the white while still keeping those highlights nice and teal bluish. The vignette here, I don't really tend to use a vignette that much, but if you want to, you can just like really accentuate this, and it looks really natural and filmic actually. I'm pleasantly surprised with how not exaggerated it looks. Even at max size, it's not crazy. So I'm just gonna reset that to like 2.5. I'm gonna bring that a little bit lower, and I'm gonna bring this to like, yeah, you know what? Even at 100%, I still think it looks great. So I'm gonna bring it to like 7.8, which is really high, but it looks good to me. Like it's not degrading the image whatsoever. It just adds that accentuated focus point on our subject. Next up is halation, and I freaking love halation, especially when I'm using it in a film look. So what we're gonna do is just turn this on and off. And right now, I don't think you can really see a difference. If we zoom in at 1000%, you might see that halation is doing just like a little bit of softness right here, but you can't really see it in the rest of the image. So if I super exaggerate this and bring this effect to 100%, you can see that things are a little bit softer, a little bit blurrier, and there's a little bit more color degradation in the little finer details here. But honestly, because of these other two parameters, you're not seeing a whole lot of effect going on. I'm going to keep that on 100%, and then I'm going to change the radius, and this is where you really start to see things happening. And obviously at 100% on the radius as well, you're going to see massive changes at that zoomed in 1000% pixel peak. But if we just turn this on and off right now, you can kind of see how it is affecting the entire image. Now, hue is going to dictate what the hue of the halation actually looks like. And I really don't like these colors on the higher end here at like 1. So what I'm going to do on this side is just bring this all the way down to 0, and then maybe a little bit higher than 0. So like somewhere around 0 to like 0.2. Super minimal change to the hue there, because red is what vintage lenses actually had, and I don't like the like green or yellow or whatever other weird halation you got going on. The red is more vintage and what actually emulates some of those older lenses. Now that we have that settled, our radius is quite crazy. I still want this at 100% for the purposes of showing off what this effect is actually doing, but check out the lights here. This is probably where you're going to see it the most. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of change the radius, and then I'm going to keep the effect tiny bit less than 100%. Now you can see that the glow around these lights when we enable it is more red, and that looks really filmic. So everything that's super bright, you're going to see this halation, this red kind of mask on top of it, and it's going to blur your image just a little bit more and give it that softer filmic look. And this is super authentic. It's just a small tweak, but it's not actually degrading your image beyond compare. It's just a nice little small subtle stylistic change that when we go from that to this, most people aren't probably going to notice, but it just adds to the general effect. The next one here is bloom, and that basically goes hand in hand with halation. You can't really have bloom without halation, especially in a filmic look. So what we're going to do here, again, you're going to notice this effect happen most with the lights here. So I'm just going to bring this up to 100%, and you're going to see how it's affecting things. And I'm going to bring the radius, especially the radius, you're going to see right now here in the lights. You can see from 0 to 100 how much of that like glow pro mist filter you're getting. That diffusion filter vibe is just coming strong through here. So I really want this basically at 100%. I'm gonna be like 90 something percent here just because it looks freaking good. Now if we turn this one on and off, it is affecting our entire image, but it's most notable in the brighter areas. I think it's a really nice effect as well. So you can just see all these white bright areas are just a little bit softer and more glowy. You can see on the shirt, on the skin, on the lights, and on these entire billboards here, really making a difference there. Obviously, you know what grain is. It's just gonna do that thing, and you have quite a few presets to choose from: 65, 35, 16, 8, and custom. And they all come with a nice level of grain depending on what look you are going for. So if we zoom back out, you can see what the different options are. 35 is going to be a little bit harsher, 16 even harsher, And then 8 is going to be the harshest preset, which is barely make outable. But grain, I feel like, really goes hand in hand with the film gate. And if you enable this, boom, it's basically a preset for that filmic cutout. So a lot of people have been using PNGs for this. Now it's just built into Davinci Resolve, and you can change the ratio, which is wild, honestly, that you have this much control. I think that's really, really cool. So once again, you have different presets, and I really think that Davinci Resolve did a very good job of this, especially with the different aspect ratios, no matter which one you do, Super 16, 8mm, 24:1. So you get all these different cinematic aspect ratios that just look freaking great and are true to life of what an actual film negative would look like. So I think that's really cool. So we're gonna keep that one for now. And then padding, you can just kind of zoom in and out depending on what effect you want. So I think this one really goes hand in hand with how much grain you want out of your image, because especially on Instagram and TikTok, you're seeing different filters to give it that nostalgic 8mm vibe right now. So I think grain on this kind of preset just looks really, really good because it's giving you all this control baked in. Flicker and gate weave are just another like film impurity that you can work with, and honestly I tend to turn those off because they're a little bit unnecessary, but that is what a filmic color grade on just one single tab. And I'm gonna come back up to 65mm grain and kind of decide whether or not I want any grain. Especially on social media, it doesn't translate super well because of compression. So a lot of time grain just looks like noise, so the compression kind of compresses it and deletes it from your image, just adding to a softer overall image, and I don't like that. So I'll turn that off if I'm posting to social media a lot of the time. So as you can see, that is what our one node color grade looks like, and this is the before and this is the after. So you have a lot of power in just this one single color grading node, and I love that Davinci Resolve included this, especially for beginners. Everything is sliders. You don't have to worry about color wheels or all these other very extensive tools that they have added in this update. If you just want the filmic look, this is really, really good. And that is the easy way of just doing everything on one node. So if you're uncomfortable with complicated color grading and a full node tree, this is a really easy way for you to just get a filmic look right off the bat and not really have to worry about anything, especially because everything is sliders. You don't really need to understand anything, and it's all simple and really easy to get. If you're liking the video thus far, please leave a like and comment. It really does help out the channel. And if you don't want to miss future videos like this, be sure to subscribe. I also have a shop which I'm constantly updating with my different color grades, so if you want to take your footage to the next level, be sure to check that out. So let's move on to the second half of this video, which is the more complex node tree, which is what I like to use when I am doing my professional color grading. So now we're going to be moving on to the second portion of the video, which is the more intense professional color grading side of things when it comes to this new filmic look. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of reset this all to nothing. And so our color space override has changed, obviously. So what we're going to do here is come up to our color space transform. We're going to put that on nodes at the beginning and end of our node tree. So what we're going to do first is put in our input color space, which is slog3, and we're going to do that here as well. And then we're going to use Davinci Resolve wide gamut and Davinci Resolve intermediate. Boom. So we're just going to do this again. So now it's Davinci Resolve and Davinci Resolve, and our output is going to be Rec 709. And because I'm working on a Mac, Rec 709A. That is what we are working with now. I'm just going to kind of reset a lot of the things here because I would prefer to do this in other nodes. So for now, I'm just going to kind of turn this off, and you can see what the difference is in a Rec 709 versus what the filmic grade is actually doing here. So the filmic grade does come with an effect built in. If we turn that on and off, it still has everything. So we have to put all these sliders. If we put these sliders to 0, you can see that there's no effect going on here. But the second we put these effects on, that's one slider, two sliders. So you can see how our effects and whatnot are coming in with just this one node. But if we wanted to make a 3D LUT compatible version, you can see that certain effects are not going to translate over to the 3D LUT. So this is what it is actually going to look like if you were to export a LUT. So you are going to be lacking some of those features. So we're just going to turn that off because that's not what we're working with today. So because we have our input and output nodes right here for color space transforms, we can completely disregard the color space override now because we've done it the more correct way. We can come back into the color settings if we we so wish, and we can mess with exposure here. But what I want to do is make a new node that precedes this node and just do basic correction there. So I'm going to turn off effects here. I'm going to clean up the node graph right here, and I'm going to come in and come to my color wheel primaries here. I'm just going to bring down the offset, and I'm going to bring up my gain, and I'm going to bring down my gamma, and then maybe bring up some of the blacks just for some detail there in the lift. So I'm just going to kind of bring that up a tiny bit, and you can see what this node has done is just really like exposure and contrast, and I really like that. So shadows we can increase here as well. I'm just going to bring them up a little bit, and then we can do a color boost if we want down here, and I'm going to go with 3. And then here again, usual, my midtone detail is going to be 12, and we just kind of increase a little bit of detail there. We can add some contrast here if we want, and I'm going to just bring this up to like 1.035, and I'm going to change my pivot depending on what I want. So I'm just going to come down a little bit more to like 0.35. So temperature here, I can kind of pick how cool or warm I want something to be. We're going for a creative look here. So I want this at 0, and I think I'm going to bring this down a little bit cooler. 150 looks good. And then here in the gain, I'm going to kind of accentuate the blue. And honestly, I think because I'm accentuating blue here, I'm going to take this back to 0 on the white balance. And you can see what effect this is having. So I think this looks pretty good. I do like that teal. And then because I've kind of washed out the skin tones here with the gain, I'm going to come back to my gamma and just bring in a little bit of warmth. And that is doing a little bit to work with the blue, kind of offset that. And with the shadows, the lift right here, I'm gonna go a little bit bluer. I kind of like this teal look. Then I also kind of like the warmer look. I think I'm gonna go slightly cooler here. So it's adding that bit of blue to the image. And I think I am going to bring a little bit more warmth back into the midtones. And I'm going to bring the tint back down a little bit to like maybe like 3 on the magenta side. So this one node here has changed from this to this, and it's given us more of that blue vibe that I really want out of this image. And then I'm going to add a new corrector node right here, and I'm going to come to my log wheels, and I'm going to kind of just really mess with the highlights and whatnot. And because we have our filmic node on, you can see how much it's affecting the halation here when we go to the extremes on the highlights, which is kind of wild to see, but I do really like that. So I'm going to just kind of like add maybe like some green, orange. Let's see. I think it's cool how it affects those lights right there. I don't want it to be too intense, but I might go a little bit on the bluer side just to kind of emphasize the blue there. So just a little subtle effect here. If we turn that on and off, you can see a tiny bit of difference in the lights. And if we zoom in on skin tones, not really a huge difference affecting the skin tones. So that's really nice that it's only really affecting the lights. And that's just a little subtle difference. And then if we come into the midtone, that is going to be huge for skin tones. So I'm just going to kind of bring this up a little bit, and you can see how much it is affecting things. So it's again just very subtle, but I don't want it to be too crazy. And then shadows, obviously I tend not to really mess with shadows just because the colors can be really wild. So next I'm going to come up to the color slice tab right here, and I'm just going to kind of mess with the colors here. And as you can see, I'm bringing the hue up and down on the color slice tab, and I'm just gonna kind of see what I want out of the reds. And obviously it's affecting her jacket and these lights in the background here. And I'm just gonna bring this down a little bit because I want it to be a little brighter on the jacket, and then I can really kind of just like emphasize the saturation, which is really cool. So I have that up quite a bit. So the before, after, it's just a little bit saturated and deeper in color. I'm gonna see what is showing up as yellow, and we're seeing yellow come in the background like right here. So I'm just gonna kind of redo that and then see if the saturation changes. I think this is probably showing up more green than yellow. So if we move on to the green, yeah, it's a little bit more noticeable here than it is on the yellow. So I'm just gonna bring this down a little bit, increase saturation, decrease saturation. I'm going to increase saturation a bit, and then I'm going to come to my hue tab right here, and I'm just going to kind of drag this and see what I can get out of this. So we've dragged it a little bit to the right, so it's a little bit to the more teal side. Then on the yellow, I'm going to mess with this again, the saturation, and it's a lot less now. So I just kind of want to see, again, it's still affecting a little subtle bit there. So I'm just going to bring this down quite a bit, and I'm going to bring the saturation down on the yellows because I don't think it's a super important color to this image. And then I might just take the yellow and kind of drag it around. You can see what that's actually doing to the the image. I do want my yellows to be quite a bit cooler, so I'll bring them into like the teal section here on the hue. And now that we have the green and yellow kind of sorted, you can see just a subtle difference to the background wallpaper here. And now the cyan, because so much of this light is cyan, I'm curious to see how much is being affected. And it's a decent amount. It's not as much as I thought it would be, but you can see the subject separation is quite nice because it's just like a nice little cutout of her because the highlights are all around her, but it's not really affecting our subject. Do I want this brighter or do I want this cooler? I don't know. I want this on the brighter side, so I'm gonna bring it down a little bit and then I can just increase the saturation, and this is where you really have so much control over how blue you want it to be, and I freaking love it. Look at this. Boom, 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 boom. So I'm just going to bring this up quite a bit because I want this image to be cool. And then because the cyan is there, we can mess with the hue and completely change the image once again. I'm just going to reset this and then go a little bit finer on my adjustments and see if I drag it to the right, it's just a little bit more blue. I might drag it to the right just a tad. And then on the blue side, this is really affecting our image. And this is where it's also affecting our subject too, because that light is a little bit darker on the skin tones. You can see what effect that is having. So if we reset this back to 0, you can see just subtle changes. I think I am going to make it just a tad bit darker. And then if I raise saturation, whoa, that one's really intense. And I think I'm just gonna bring it down just a little bit. I don't know which way I wanna go on this. I think I might go like up just a little bit. So like 1.02. So just a very minor change. But you can see, again, all these subtle changes are adding up to make a nice little difference. Magenta, I don't know how much is showing up as magenta, but if we just play with the wheel, you can kind of see what is affecting that. Magenta is showing up in the jacket. I'm gonna put this all the way up, take the hue slider and just mess with it. So I want this to be more burgundy. And now since I've brought it to the left of the hue slider, it is giving me that different color. And I do want it to be a little bit brighter and a little bit more saturated. Oh, I don't know. That's a tough one because the saturation is showing up in the jacket, but it's also coming up in the top right corner here. So if I bring up saturation just a little bit, I think I'm gonna be like 115-ish, just a little bit more saturated. I like that. And now because of that, I wanna see where the reds are laying. I do kind of want the reds a little brighter there. And then I'm gonna increase saturation like there. But then now I'm going to see, yeah, I can dial in exactly what I want. So I want this red to be a little bit more on the reddish side than the orangish side. So I'm just gonna drag that to the left and here we go. Boom. Another nice little subtle difference on this color node. And now we can clean up the node graph and things are looking freaking good. I think the before and after of all of this is just like, it is looking very, very nice. So now we can come back into our filmic look. So this is what it looks like before and after the split tone difference. And now that we've had all these other nodes going on here, let's see if I change the hue angle a little bit and hit edit undo, because I want to see what the differences would be. I might go a little bit on the lower side here just for some more finite details. And then pivot. Pivot is affecting the skin tones quite greatly. So I think I'm gonna just bring this a tiny bit lower, like 370. With the vignette, I'm going to turn that off because I'm going to do that on a separate node tab. Halation, I really, really like the halation. And I love how much it kind of helps blur the image and just give it that softer tone. I think it looks really, really nice. So I'm gonna keep that as is. And the bloom as well, I really, really like. I think it is hard to deny how nice that looks with the bloom. So I'm gonna keep that as is. And then all my other settings, I'm basically going to keep the same on that because I really like how that looks. What I'm going to do is add another node here and then just come to the window section. And I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna hit reverse or invert actually. So I'm just going to put this on my subject and then I'm going to kind of just make that a little on the blurrier side with a nice feather. And now we can see how this is going to actually affect our image. So we're just going to take our tone curve and you can see how our masking is working. So I'm just going to bring this down quite a bit. And I think that looks pretty nice on our subject. Boom, 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 boom. Look at the difference there. Oh, looks so freaking good. And definitely a more powerful and versatile vignette than the built-in film look one. That might be a bit of a intense thing. So I'm gonna bring that back up just a little bit. And now because of the lights, it's kind of harder to see where that vignette fall off is. And I really, really like that. So I'm gonna add a outside, and this is going to be like the exact opposite of the node that we just did. So it's only going to be affecting the inside portion of that node. So what I'm going to do is just kind of brighten that so you can see the effect that I'm doing here. So I'm just going to come in and raise this on my midtones, just a smidgen, not a lot, but a little bit. So I'm going to bring that down because that's too much of an effect. But now you can just see just a little bit brighter on our subject. And I think that looks really, really good. And then because we have our bloom on our film node, so I'm gonna make a new tab here and I'm going to come up to the effects tab and I'm going to search for glow because I'm curious how it will affect our image based off of what we've already done with the filmic one. So here, it's not a huge difference that we've changed just yet. If I go here and I add a bunch of teal, and then I come down here and do soft light, there we go. You can see what effect that's having. So I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna come here, be really subtle, spread. I'm gonna add that, and then I'm gonna add the opacity in slowly, very subtle. So the before, after, before, after. The glowing effect here is just kind of more of a universal color tint, it's seeming. So I'm gonna see what it is actually affecting. So we're going to kind of really depend on what the shine threshold is right here. So what I'm going to do is just kind of mess with this slider until I'm happy with it. And I'm going to constantly turn this on and off so it's not a kind of like universal blue glow. So I think somewhere around like the 5 mark is when it starts to kick in. There we go. And if we put this all the way up to 1, it's kind of affecting the whole image. But then if we bring this down to nothing, it's really a universal like tint on everything. So I just want a little bit of a subtle effect, nothing crazy. So if we turn this effect on and off, you can see that we've added quite a bit more blue and it's kind of darkened the image just a little bit. And I don't know if I want it to be that dark. It kind of adds that night vibe, but I think I am going to kind of raise just the overall exposure back on our primaries node just a little bit, just to compensate for that. So we were at like 18 something. I think I'll go a little bit higher. And that is our final image. I think we look really, really good if we do the before and the after. We've come a long way with how we've made things look. And obviously our filmic look right here on this node is really kind of carrying this entire image, and this is what really brings this to life. So you have the easy version, which is just the one node, and then you have all this other stuff, which is a lot more intense, but definitely gives this image a little bit more oomph, in my opinion. And that is how we color graded this clip. We went from this to this. And it's so easy now that everything is built in. I'm so glad Davinci Resolve included this in the new update because now there's just a super simple way with all the different effects that everyone is actually looking for in one tab. And it makes it really easy for people who are unfamiliar with color grading to get that very authentic in look right now. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe because it really does help out the channel. My name is Marc Steiner and I will see you next time.